Week, I delved here into recent data from the CDC suggesting major problems with regard to the mental health of our adolescents, surges in depression and suicidal ideation, especially true for our girls. This week, I found cause to worry about young men. This headline from The Hill, it caught my eye. Most young men are single. Most young women are not. The story reported that as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single. Now, look at these numbers. 34% of women, twice as many, a whopping 63% of men. What explains that? I pulled the Pew study and I read with interest. Turns out since 2019, the share of single men who say they're looking for dates or a relationship has declined from 61% to 50%. In 2018, 28% of men ages 18 to 30 reported they'd had no sex in the past year, compared with 18% of women of that age. The Hill report said men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at the vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, and relationships that afflicts all of young America. Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn. But also, more young women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men, and heterosexual women are getting more choosy. Other troubling statistics about men come from a 2021 study from the Survey Center for American Life. They found the share of men who have 6 or more close friends, which in 1990 was 55%, by 2021 had shrunk by half. Meanwhile, those with literally 0 close friends, which stood at 3% in 1990, has zoomed to 15%.
I am absolutely stunned with the information that has been presented by CNN. Now, if CNN is covering this topic, that's how you know that it's starting to become a shit show out there.
An expert quoted by The Hill said this disconnect can have catastrophic consequences for young men. Quote, in the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger women are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings, a trend that some researchers link to their growing social isolation. Well, those words reminded me of a conversation that I had over a year ago right here on CNN with NYU professor Scott Galloway.
But the issue is, when you have a group of men, the lower half of attractiveness of men, and online dating, which has doubled, now it's about half of relationships, and the top 20% of men in terms of attractiveness get about 60% of the interest, you end up with a group of men that are more prone to conspiracy theory, more prone to misogynistic content, more prone to not believe in climate change. So this is the American story. If it's written with a pen whose ink is failing young men, does not end well. This is an existential crisis, failing young men.
As always, Professor Galloway was prescient. Back with me now is Scott Galloway. He's a professor of marketing at NYU Stern School of Business. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's the host of the Professor G podcast and author of multiple best-selling books, most recently, Adrift, America in 100 Charts. Scott, thanks for returning. Hasn't the advantage always been to those with the looks and or the money? What's changed?
First off, Michael, I just want to say thank you for raising this issue a year ago when a lot of media companies were afraid to talk about this for fear of it being pro-men with somehow being anti-women. Look, this is returning to the natural order of things. For the majority of history, a small percentage of men have had the majority of the mating opportunities. But in America, we decided to make a huge investment in what would probably be the greatest innovation in history, and that is in the middle class. From 1945 to 1947, 7 million men returned from war, were discharged from the service, and we decided to give them the GI Bill, subsidized mortgages. We saw education rates go from 5 to 45%. They were valued, and we had such a strong manufacturing base that you had massive marriage and household formation. And some men were seen as more economically and emotionally viable. And you've seen the reverse happen with the offshoring of much of our manufacturing base, with a society that, quite frankly, doesn't value young men. When we talk about problems with people of color or women, we see it as a systemic societal problem. When we see problems or the stats that you just mentioned, we see it as accountability, or that men just need to level up. But married households and household formation are better citizens. They vote. They save at twice the rate. They're less likely to commit crimes.
If you were born in the 90s, you know for a fact that that era was the best time growing up because there wasn't any social media. I honestly feel really bad for millennials and Gen Z because they will have no idea what it's like growing up in a normal society. And sadly, this is happening in different countries as well. Our world has evolved so much in the worst way possible.
And then, Scott, you toss in the influence of social media and how relationships today, they don't come from, in our era, happenstance and mingling, right? They come from swiping, and that further accelerates this issue. Am I right?
Oh, it's been the chaser to it. I mean, to have an honest conversation about this, we have to be honest, and that is that men and women have different mating criteria. One quarter of men saying economic viability is a key criteria in a mate. 3/4 of women say that is important. And when you're on a two-dimensional format, where now it's 1 and 2 relationships begin online, it used to be 1 and 4 just a few years ago, it gets distilled down to a small number of criteria. Specifically for men, it's does she look attractive? And specifically for men, is he able to signal his ability to garner resources in the future? An average attractive male on Tinder gets swiped less than 1% of the time. And there's 3 men on Tinder for every 1 woman. So you've distilled it, you've taken out one of the key components of mating dynamics, and that is vibe, humor, body language, pheromones, the ability to be, quite frankly, a little bit persistent in the pursuit of a romantic relationship. We have no third places anymore, no places to meet. People aren't going to bars, they aren't sports league, they aren't going to church, they aren't even going to work. So it gets distilled down to very 1 or 2 dimensional attributes. And the reality is women are much choosier than men, and they can apply those screens, and they allocate all of their attention to a small number of men that results in just essentially at the end of the day, a lack of opportunities.
From the data and statistics provided, I can see why a lot of men are walking away from dating because the majority of men are tired of being walking ATMs and emotional therapists. Remember, Kings, don't be her therapist. Be the reason why she sees a therapist. And it's not that men are scared of getting married. They're just scared of getting divorced. I remember I was talking to a guy who is recently divorced. He told me, and this stuck out to me like a sore thumb. He said the most loneliest he ever felt were sharing a house and his resources with somebody who did not appreciate or care about him. Be careful who you fall in love with, gentlemen, because the majority of these girls, they're not looking for love. They are looking for help.
Summarized it perfectly. Call it the high heels effect. In the last 40 years, more women have graduated from college than men, and they're not interested in mating with non-college grads. They now own more homes, single women, than single men. So what you have is women say they won't date anyone shorter than them, 50% of them. Effectively, what you have metaphorically over the last 40 years is women have been getting taller and taller, and men have been getting shorter and shorter. How many of us have said, I know a ton of great single women, they can't find a date? That's not true. They can't find a date. They can't find a man they find economically or emotionally viable. If we don't make a massive investment in young people and make more economically and emotionally viable men, we're going to see a lack of household formation. We're going to see a decline in the middle class. And we're going to see, quite frankly, just a lot of young men who are terrible citizens.
So is the answer to fix this economically, and who will champion this conversation? You felt obliged to compliment me at the outset because we had engaged on this a year ago, and here I am revisiting it. And I read into that the fact that you think that it's politically incorrect even to have this dialogue.
When you're seen as advocating for men because of the 300,000-year head start we've had, it seems somehow as anti-female. There's a lot of very unfortunate misogyny online that is masquerading as being pro-men. A lot of TikTok celebrities who talk about advocating for men, it's just thinly veiled misogyny. What do we need? We need more freshman seats in colleges. We need a massive investment in vocational training. We need to figure out a way to get more permitting for housing so young people can afford housing. We need to recognize our economic policies literally allocate wealth from young people to old people. The percentage of wealth that young people control under the age of 40 has been cut from 12% to 6%. These are concerted, deliberate decisions. We did away with the child tax credit. We don't want to make it any easier for people to have kids, but seniors just got their largest cost of living adjustment increase in history. We have made the decision to make it harder and more expensive for people to find each other, for people to mate, and for people to have children. And without children, we turn into Japan and Italy, and that is we go into population decline and our economy goes into decline. We are about to become a society by the turn of the century. There will be 8 times as many people over the age of 60 and half as many kids under the age of 5. Nursery schools will become these strange situations with old people staring through fences at these creatures they don't see in the wild called children. Is this the world we want? Do we want a lack of kids? Do we want a lack of ability to create households? The happiest, most prosperous, most purposeful people in America are middle-class families. And we have made a concerted decision to punch it in the gut and make it harder for that type of family formation. And we're going to lose prosperity and we're going to lose purpose.
May 1st, we have to put down the social media. I said this before, many videos. We have to collectively put down the social media, remove it. That means joint together. That means women, you have to delete it, delete the app, because you're seeing posts, you're seeing widespread of the wrong type of influence. You're not realizing you're seeing insecurity boosts. You're not realizing, you're seeing shape and it's affecting insecurity levels. You're not realizing the truth that it's affecting and rising insecurity levels, therefore harming relationships, having relationship doubts. And to the men, collectively as a team, as you're talking to a man, you should both be like, hey, let's go ahead and delete it. Number 2, we have to collectively also stop playing certain kinds of music. I don't care what you say, but certain stuff like The Weeknd or Ariana, this influence is another form of influence of, oh, yeah, I'm doing better. Yeah, let me leave the relationship to do better. Let me leave. Let me just be cool. Let me just go out. The Weeknd of, oh, yeah, this and that. These are intentional songs paid and from companies and publishing labels, record labels that literally feed to put out songs that influence the clubs. The song's purpose from the record labels is ran by people who only choose and select songs all in your faces to distract you, to improve the club amount, separation, the club, so that the clubs and the touring and the shows and the touring gets the higher income. They're feeding that. They're not feeding couple keeping songs. They're not feeding communication in your relationship type of songs. They're feeding songs you're not realizing, brainwashing of like it's okay, and it's all another influence too. Number 1 was we have to collectively delete the social media apps, the music. You have to try to play your own mind, communicating and keeping. Number 3, we have to stop going through phones and put phones down in general. Like the video I have attached to this said, in the 90s, in the 80s and back, there was no phones for either of us to, this and that over there, or be going through. We have to instead improve communication. We have to try to work it out with that partner instead of just simply relying on going through an influential phone device, creating arguments that's ruining the possible love of your life. That you two would, if you're holding hands, he wants all the time to be holding your hand everywhere you go. He wants to hold your hand. He cries with you. He calls you, calls you a lot. Makes plans. You guys make plans together. See the world together. Love each other. Do not make because of phones. We have to collectively do, just for an example, these 3 things, for example, to undo what the last video I have attached is saying, because it is declining. It is definitely declining relationships. Way more women are single or going dating, trying out dating, stuff like that. Not trying to communicate and work out that love of your life relationship. Where y'all went everywhere, y'all did so much. These things. That's it's going to end up in a society where there's no joint homes. It also ends up in a society where women, more than ever, because of social influence, are like 60K, 70K. You're not realizing you're overdoing yourself. You're overworking when you can live a more peaceful life by not being caught up in the hype and the influence. So you got the women working like nuts, like crazy, because you're being influenced. Learn and recognize you're being influenced and brainwashed of the 60K or better, 70K or better. Oh, they're doing this, they're doing this. Oh, look at this on social media. They're over here, they're over there. Your mind, your brain is being fed by brainwashing instead of trying to construct and communicate to your partner for a strong, wealthy family. All of these things. Oh, 60K or better, 70K, you're being influenced. If he is ambitious, hardworking, wants to hold your hand everywhere you go, cherishes you from head to your toes, and hardworking and willing to listen, and then y'all could work as a team for communication, sit each other down and have sit-down conversations. That's what will remove from these traps where we're influenced. You're not realizing being influenced to separate. Influenced by the social medias, raising your insecurity. You're seeing stuff that's brainwashing you from yourself and how great you are. You two are as a partner. Don't have insecurity. Work on communication in your relationship. avoid all of these things. So I said this before in other videos. The only survival before it becomes pandemic, before it becomes kind of craziness, before it becomes like I said, an increase in just chaotic things, and women just increase in unhappiness over the long run. Women increase in just just being brainwashed, not really realizing that we need to have that partner that wants to hold your hand, that wants to cherish you from head to toe, right? Clearly adores you, and you adorn them, and communicate, man. Have those conversations and make life together. Don't follow the distractions and the brainwashings and be all over here like that. Don't go to seek online stuff. Put away the phones, guys. We need to boycott to have more simpler phones, or to put away phones. And those who agree with me, join on like a simpler phone, like a simple phone call phone. Lessen the internet off. We need to delete social medias together. We need to delete those social media apps together, collectively. Number 3, only play certain music. Avoid the club enticing music, not realizing it's paid, directed to boost the songs. Remove these things. They're brainwashing you all to go out here and not see that you need to just have communicated with whom loved you and adorned you, cherished you from your head down to your toes, wanted to go everywhere with you kind of partner, and you're just going out or repeating, and it's chaos.